Polycarp. This is your APTN News Brief for Thursday, February 22nd. Today is a painful day for families of the victims of convicted serial killer Robert Pickton. That's because today is the day he's just become eligible for parole. A development Assembly of First Nations B.C. Regional Chief Terry Teegee is watching closely. He shared some of his thoughts with APTN's Tina House.
Well, I think it's very concerning for many of the families, especially those that he was never convicted of. He was convicted on 6. Certainly, I think there's no closure for the rest of the families who had loved ones that were murdered by Robert Pickton. And really, I think one of the things that we do know and what we heard from the families, it's re-traumatizing some of the families.
And let's go back to that. Yes, he was only convicted of 6 out of 26. There's still 20 other families that are still waiting for justice for those killings.
Well, I think those families want to seek some sort of justice, some answers. It's certainly, our prayers are with them during this very difficult time. You know, what needs to happen is to realize that the justice system really doesn't fit in many of these cases in regards to the after effects of Robert Pickton. Really, I think many of these families do have unanswered questions, and in particular, like with some of the issues with the evidence, how were they involved? Was every measure taken to make sure that the evidence that is still in the police's hands was utilized and or, I would say, repatriated with those families?
As the AFN Regional Chief here for BC, what do you plan on doing to make it better for so many women and girls that are still vulnerable to predators like Pickton and others?
You know, there's many recommendations that we heard in the National Inquiry. 231 calls to justice. We need to implement those calls. And certainly it's fallen on deaf ears on the federal government. It's incumbent upon this government to really implement many of the recommendations with the First Nations, not simply checking off the boxes and saying it's done. I think this is a process of changing the relationship with Indigenous peoples, for this case in particular, for Indigenous women and girls, that they are safe. And that was the impetus of why the inquiry was started. We're still seeing many missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this country, and that has to change, that has to stop.
A reported 29,000 dead, 2/3 said to be women and children. Over 4 months into hostilities, that's the civilian death toll among Palestinians in Gaza, according to health officials there. The outcome of a near constant bombardment by the Israeli government following the Hamas-led attack of October 7th. Now, a Mi'kmaq First Nation in New Brunswick has signaled their call for an immediate ceasefire in the region by raising a Palestinian flag. Angel Moore reports.
The Palestinian flag raised for the children of Gaza in a ceremony at the Natahoaneg First Nations School. Asia Johnson helped raise the flag.
I like raising the flag because when people are getting hurt in Gaza, that means I was feeling it's important to raise their flag.
Zaid Kaji is a Miramichi physician who organized the event. Although the Palestinian flag is not affiliated with Hamas, declared terrorist group by Canada, Israel has banned it from public places in Palestine. But Kaji insists his intentions are peaceful, and it's to remember the thousands of children killed in the conflict.
My love for our children, my love for my children. And if I love my children, I can only assume other parents love their children.
About 200 people gathered at the community school gym where Kaji announced,
"This is the first community in this country where the Palestinian flag will be raised on a permanent basis in solidarity."
Kaji approached Chief George Guinish to display the Palestinian flag because Guinish had seconded a motion by Wilton Littlechild at last December's Assembly of First Nations meeting. The motion called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and recognized Palestinians as Indigenous people under international law.
And that's when it struck us with the AFN resolution that we were knocking on the wrong doors, and that there's a powerful force in Canada who will allow us the avenue to express our humanity.
Guinish believes what is happening in Gaza is similar to what has happened to Indigenous people in Canada.
I guess caring about, the larger Indigenous community, how can we support each other? How can we show that we do care about what is going on.
Kia Atencio is an activist from the Listugush Mi'kmaq Nation. She traveled from Halifax, Nova Scotia to show support for the event.
It was a proud moment as a Mi'kmaq person to see that another Mi'kmaq person recognize and push forward this resolution so that we can demand a ceasefire and have peace.
The event brought Mi'kmaq community members and Palestinian people together, including Layla Abamer and Mariam Mohammed, who both traveled from Fredericton.
This is huge. At a time where we can't raise our flag in our own cities, to see it being raised here was very emotional, very healing. And with seeing everything that has been going on for the past 4 months, I think we get numb at some points. This kind of touched a very, very deep wound.
Mohammed felt united with the Mi'kmaq community.
And I've always felt a sense of connection being a Palestinian with the Indigenous story and what they've gone through. And so to see us all here today together, it just was healing.
The Gitbuesk Women Eagle Spirit Drummers group sang in ceremony.
But it was very powerful. And to see this other community come into our community, and they're just like us. Like the kids are the same. The parents are the same, it was amazing.
Guinness said the Palestinian flag will fly until Orange Shirt Day on September 30th. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Nadahawaneg First Nation.
And finally, a touring one-man show landed in the nation's capital this week. Dubbed the Ballantine Project, it takes its name from 29-year-old Dwight Ballantine, a young Indigenous man who hopes dialogue can help make room for reconciliation. A 4-year tour which recently brought Ballantine before students at Notre Dame High, where he spoke openly about his 21 years on Montreal Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, from dropping out of school to dealing with drugs, alcohol, and racism off reserve, to then finding his way back to school to turn his life around. Ballantine says the project's meant to empower Indigenous youth while educating others about issues faced by some First Nations.
When I moved from reserve, I thought people knew about life on reserve, and I realized that nobody really knows what life on reserve is like. You hear stories about on reserve, but to actually share the story of what I went through for 21 years of my life, it opens a lot of conversations, and I feel like having that conversation is the first step to educating yourself as a Canadian. And I like speaking to diverse groups because it's what opens the door to deeper conversations.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Thursday, February 22nd. I'm Rick Harp.